If you still believe that there is going to be some kind of like reasonable centrism we can get back to, you're wrong. You're delusional. You have two options: socialism or barbarism. And right now, barbarism is winning. Apparently, he says the liberal New World Order was based around a lie in this, and that's why people really like it.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless.
And he's not appeasing. He's not. I actually like what Mark Carney has been doing, even though I'm, skeptical. Let's just say I'm Carney curious, okay? Or maybe Carney agnostic. Because there are some things that he's done, especially since Donald Trump is deliberately posturing as though he's going to annex Canada. He recognizes the dangers that presents. Was, this is a major ally to the United States of America, openly choosing to leverage a better relationship with China in an effort to maintain sovereignty. So I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a smart thing to do. It's what I've been saying European leaders should be doing.
And in it, he asked a simple question.
I've been saying that he should be. What Mark Carney did this past week is what I've been saying European leaders should be doing since Liberation Day. And what have European leaders done since then? What have they done? They talked about the real threat being China and Russia. The real threat is China. The real threat is China. The real threat is China. America, please, we are your dog. America, please, we will capitulate. And what did that do? What did that do to Trump? Did that stop Trump from saying he's going to take Greenland? No. Did that stop Trump from implementing tariffs? No. You have to push back on bullies. It's that simple. And this entire right-wing franchise, this entire global fascist movement is a bunch of stupid bullies. The time for maintaining some sort of like liberalism is done. Liberalism is failing. Liberalism is falling apart. If you still believe that there is going to be some kind of like reasonable centrism we can get back to, you're wrong. You're delusional. Okay? Wake up. It's over. You have two options: socialism or barbarism. And right now, barbarism is winning. And a lot of these guys who are liberals themselves, who are in charge of these countries, are trying to still maintain the dignity, as America is basically saying, no, you don't understand. There is no dignity for you here. Internationalism, or like the liberal New World Order, is done. It's over, okay? It's over. It's now going to be my way or the highway. It already was, but now you can't even actually go home and make it seem like you have some semblance of sovereignty.
How did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with the greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it, but he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, When the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack.
Okay.
For companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades. For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain, let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains.
By the way, when he says great powers, he just means America. I love that. I love that he's like, yeah, someone's doing this. Is really up. Someone is just, you missed a sick line. He's talking about neoliberalism.
Depending on the identity of the accused, this fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain, let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited.
It is an undeniable fact that the world was much better when the Soviet Union was still around. I mean, dude, I said that. Everyone yelled at me. I said that in an interview that I was doing at the Zoran election victory party, where like, you don't have to agree with the USSR. You don't have to think about all of the, you don't have to think about the excesses in terms of their own self-governance. Objectively speaking, when there was an alternative vision out there, especially one that did not shy away from pushing back against America during the Cold War, a lot of other countries in the middle, even if they were in the imperial core, were able to keep their gains, keep their benefits. And in the absence of that counter mechanism, in the absence of that counterweight, it is not an accident that we have seen the great explosion of neoliberalism in every Western liberal capitalist country. When capital owners no longer feared the threat of an alternative, the threat of a good example, they did away with all of the safeguards, all of the regulations, first in the United States of America and then elsewhere. All over Europe, you started seeing the same corrosive influence of capital make its way through a period of neoliberalization, the destruction of social safety nets, the destruction of what remains of the regulatory body. Holy disgusting tankies. You are fantasizing about a world that does not exist when you complain about this, okay? I need you to understand. Not for people behind the wall. Oh my God. The French healthcare system was literally the design of the Communist Party backed by the USSR. It's thanks to them that we have healthcare for all, and people bash the left here when we have one of the best, or used to have, healthcare systems in the world. It's the same principle that it's the same exact situation here in the United States of America, by the way. Obviously, the quality of life or the living standards are different. The currency exchange is different. Having said that, however, the attitude remains. A lot of people don't realize that in the United States of America, if it wasn't for commies, trade unionists, socialists fighting in the streets, dying in the streets, that America would not have any labor laws whatsoever. You wouldn't have the weekend. You would still have child labor. And ironically enough, we still do have child labor in the United States of America. Okay. And not just for undocumented immigrant children. I mean, like straight up, you have child labor in many states that have openly legalized it. Like there are so many excesses under capitalism as well that many people do not understand or recognize, because for the longest time, you've existed under the system thinking, well, the alternative is much scarier, is much more dangerous. And in the absence of said alternative, you have this explosion of neoliberalism around the globe. You have the forces of capital taking up more and more, taking up a bigger role in what previously was dealt with by the government. People don't realize that a lot of the things that you take for granted were fought for by your forefathers in the labor movement. All the hate sub clip Andes are here. I mean, great. It's fine. You can keep complaining about tankies this, tankies that, but a lot of Europeans benefited without realizing, like, all of the social democracy that Europe has, even still to this day, they got because capital had to give in. Capital had to give in. Capital had to concede to the demands being made. And those demands were made because there was an alternative vision. Once all of that was eroded through Red Scare all around Western liberal nations, Western liberal democracies, you have no competition. You have no ideological competition and full-blown pure capitalism. And as living standards erode in Western liberal capitalist nations, look to blame whoever they can. And for a lot of these guys, for the reactionary movement, the best people you can... What is DHS live? Dude, why? What do you mean DHS is up, DHS is live? What the fuck are you talking about? I like how he's making an analogy about the mean communist government forcing business to comply while Canada is negotiating with China while the U.S. is an extremely capitalistic country that's forcing these nations to comply. Exactly. People don't recognize this. People don't understand that, like, oh, Bovino is live? I don't care about bovine Bovino. Dude, come on. I know what the DHS stands for. Anyway, the point I'm making is that alternative vision must come back. And that alternative vision clearly is not going to be supported by China. Okay? Let's be real. For better or for worse, China decided they are not going to wage any sort of ideological war around the world, even if it's beneficial for their immediate interests in their backyard in the South China Sea. They're not going to do that. So if it is a game of sovereignty for a lot of these nations, the only way that you can maintain national sovereignty, especially as America is increasingly doing away with the aesthetics of liberty and freedom, making it seem as though you have a say, is going to be through, and I know normally I say nukes, but it's going to be through serious organizing and an ideological commitment to an alternative vision, giving workers back the power that they deserve. It's not going to happen with, like, China helping you either.
You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the very architecture of collective problem solving. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself, when the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and the gains from transactional...
I mean, he's talking about just America when he says great powers, for the record. Like, everybody understands that, right? Like, every time he says great powers, just put America in there, because that's what he's talking about. He's saying law of the jungle, we're abandoning the aesthetics of, like, liberal democracy, and we're giving ground to might makes right politics. We're going back to almost like a colonial structure here. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was wondering if, like, a peasant in the age of monarchs would think to himself, like, well, I'm so glad me lordship has sent the squires over to Jerusalem. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Holy Crusades, like, it's like, oh, all the bounty will come back to me, a peasant. In the same way that in the age of the internet, there are American peasants who unironically are so committed to, like, American force projection that they do delude themselves into thinking that, American military posture in Venezuela is actually good for me. American military posture in Iraq was good for me somehow. It wasn't.
Will become harder, cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty.
Yeah. My lordship is based. My lordship is based.